Let's narrow in on this to make it even more useful for people. So we've basically had a debate there over IQ and experience when it comes from an investor's perspective on whether they feel safe and secure in a deal. So if you are someone starting out, how can you mitigate trying to leverage experience, even though you may not have any, but you're smart enough to be able to put that together? Because if you're not smart enough to put deals together to do that stuff, then that's an innate issue you may have, and you need education, or you need to go get experience secondhand, work with a development company, etc., etc. But let's just say, as someone who's ready, but they've not got the experience yet, but they're ready to go, and they need to leverage experience to make investors feel comfortable. Stuart, we'll come around to you the first one here. What would you say is the way you can mitigate that?
You've got to be around it. You just got to be around the decisions, see where, and learn from other people's mistakes. I've learned so much from watching other people make the wrong mistake, going, shit, I wouldn't have done that. Or people have gone bust in the past and cash flows killed them, and I've been around it and gone, shit, I should never run my own business because it looks terrifying. To then ponder on it, to work out what the right solutions are, to then build the systems and processes to make sure it can never happen to you. But you don't understand how valuable these things are until you've physically seen it and witnessed it. So joining a good firm, if you've got time, no money, be around people. What can you offer them in terms of value, in terms of lessons learned? Because you don't want to you need to be a sponge, I think, to get the most benefit out of the people you're around. It's a difficult one. You've got to be around people who are making the right call or the wrong call to learn what the right thing to do is. You can only read so much in a book, or be around people in university, and you can have the best IQ in the world, but if you ain't actually lived the mistakes, if you don't know what you don't know, that's basically it.
And Dorian, what would you do in that scenario? Mitigating the risk, getting that first deal over the line. How do you make an investor feel comfortable?
That's a good one. Sometimes making an investor feel comfortable is just actually about projecting your confidence, to be honest with you, rather than some of the investors I've raised from, believe it or not, some of the questions don't really get into that. It does come down to whether they trust you and believe you. I don't know what's happened here. My lighting, sorry. But in terms of, hypothetically though, if they were looking at doing due diligence and realised that I was inexperienced for the job, the only really way is to onboard the team with that experience and try to sell that more than anything. For example, there's some jobs that we're doing in this business where we've had to do that with clients where we've not built a reinforced concrete frame structure before as a development. That this is happening right now, but people in my team have. So when I'm in the meeting, there's obviously myself and the business hasn't done it before, but this guy has. And then if they have somebody on their team that has it, all it takes sometimes is them answering like one or two or three questions correctly in their eyes, and that's it. The trust level's up there, and you're good to go. And that's when I was raising finance as well. When I was first starting out, my experience was that too. Once the first couple of questions, if they've asked anything like remotely technical, and you've been able to answer it, or you've had someone with you that could answer it succinctly and correctly, then the trust level goes up there and you kind of move on. It's that really I've found.
Yeah, I think for me, it's all about what they want to see. You might have people that are more driven on trust. You might have more people that are driven on numbers. You might have more people that are driven on leverage. So how much their capital goes up to the value of what you're doing. I think it all depends on, I've had conversations with investors that, let's say they're completely trust driven, that would go up to 90% loan to value. And then I've got other investors that have a fixated metric that they will not go over 60% LTV. And that's just how they are. But the trust thing is probably less important to them because they might lean on more litigious routes of security rather than, man to man or man to, person. So for me, it's about finding out, same as when we're buying something, find out what the seller wants, find out what the investor wants. They might not want, every investor we engage and we communicate and we deal with slightly differently. We obviously have our own processes and reporting processes, but it all completely varies. So, some investors do handshake deals. Some of them want everything under the sun to get to their decision and move forwards with it. So the principal thing that I do is ask them what they want. And that's actually we have a sort of set questions that we ask the investors and get the bigger picture stuff. What do you want to achieve? Why are you here today meeting with me, and why do you want to invest in a developer, and where do you want to go from that? And they might say, I want to retire in 6 years. I want to, create a pot of this value so that I can do this, that, or the other. And it's all about making sure that they can help us get to where we want to go and vice versa.
How much do you value the friendship and the trust on two ways? Like, basis the money. Like, if you're desperate for the money and you've got someone with the money who's willing to invest, but they're not particularly not a nice person, but how much would you value the deal versus the relationship?
Depends on the contract, I think, in that scenario. And the size of the deal and all kinds of variables, I think. But if they're really not a good culture, if they're not a good cultural fit, like as in if you just will not get along with this person, then it's not like it's just never worth the headache. I don't think ever, even if you're desperate, still not worth it.
Carry on, but I've got to shoot. Very sorry, I've got
sell them deals.
But yeah, you got to get them deals done. So catch you all in a bit.
See you later, Dee.
Have a good weekend, mate. Yeah, this conversation is giving me flashbacks to when we first started. And the benefit when we first started is we had our own money to do our first deal, which is obviously a big advantage, because when we're talking about the investor hypothesis, if you've got your own money to do your first deal, well, great. You can get skin in the game at your own cost. So putting that to one side, I remember going back to the start of this, and bear in mind, I was from scratch across the board. Just the level of momentum you need to create in all facets, from finding architects to finding contractors to finding the area you want to operate in to finding the investor to getting the knowledge to building your network. It is just, you've got to be momentous on all fronts when you're starting out. And I don't think there's any way around that. So let's put that as one thing. I think a way you can mitigate risk with investors is there's loads of ways you can do it. One of the ways is deal structure. So you can structure the deal in a way where you have contingency for any worst case scenario. So if you're doing a flip, well, you make sure they have a minimum return on their capital. And if you don't meet that return with the agreed 50-50 split, then you part ways with part of your side. And that's a fair way to be able to get that investor on board and into the upside, and knowing that they've got their skin in the game and they should get a stake from your side, and you're willing to give that over on the basis that you want them to get the good return. And the same could work for a retention strategy. You might retain the asset. If it doesn't get the yield that it needs at 50-50, then you can part ways with some of your income to subsidize their return, is another way you can do things. So there's an inherent deal structure that works. And then there's partnerships. If you don't have the knowledge or the expertise, you might just want to bring in a business partner. It might even just be on that one deal. You give them something for it, or a project manager or something like that. And then the other way I'd say you could do it, if you're struggling to raise the investor finance on a joint venture basis and someone to come into a deal with you, you could just try and get that momentum by offering a service and offering a sourcing and project management service, which is probably the leanest way you can get experience. The investor gets all the upside of the project and you're taking a fee for the service. And initially you could start out at a nominal fee because they're effectively investing to get you experience. And that's a very win-win scenario. Once you've got that first one under the belt, case study it, and you can then start using that as leverage to claw more in future deals. I think there's loads of ways you could do it. You got to kind of get creative.